This happened when I was about 12 or 13 years old, so about 15 years ago. For context, I'm female, and the town I live in has developed a lot since then. But when this happened, there were a lot of factories spread out with lots of land between them. A Walmart was being built in the area, but construction had barely started. There was a main highway running through the area, but my mom didn't like taking it because traffic would usually be bad. The side streets we used to take were desolate and had little to no traffic. I can't remember where we were coming from that night. But in the car were my mom, my brother who was 3 years younger than me, and me. My mom was driving, I was in the passenger seat, and my brother was sitting behind me. My mom is the sweetest person ever, but she's very adamant about never stopping to help someone on the side of the road or picking anyone up, especially when her kids are in the car. However, she always makes sure to call the police so they can help. It was around 9 p.m., and we were heading home when my mom and I spotted someone by the side of the road, with their hood up. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, so my mom slowed down a little as it was dark outside and she didn't want to harm anyone who might be fixing their car. As we got closer, this guy stepped out from around the hood of the car and started waving us down. I don't remember much of his description because I wasn't paying much attention, and it was dark, but I do remember feeling bad that we weren't stopping to at least see if he needed help. By this point, the man was standing in the middle of the road waving his arms, but as we got closer to the car, we didn't see anyone else inside. So my mom swerved around him and told my brother to find her phone in her purse, which was on the floor between the front and back seats. I looked at my mom and her face went white. Her eyes widened. My mom slammed her foot on the accelerator. This was highly unusual for her as she always follows the speed limit. At this point, I knew something was wrong. My mom's voice became high-pitched, and in a panicked tone she was asking my brother where her phone was. I started yelling at her, asking what was going on. The chaos freaked my brother out, and with him being so little, he started crying because he couldn't find the phone. My mom kept her eyes on the road, glancing at the rearview mirror constantly. Finally, she answered, "He's following us." I wasn't sure what she meant, but I knew this wasn't a good situation. My mom was speeding toward the highway and thankfully there was no traffic. I looked in the back window and saw someone passing cars trying to keep up with us. I asked my mom where she was going and she told me she was heading to the police station. As we got closer, my mom told me to jump out of the car as soon as she stopped, grab my brother from the back seat, and she'd run around to meet us. My mom stopped right in front of the police station, and without waiting for the car to fully stop, she slammed it into park. I opened the door as fast as I could and grabbed my brother, and we both took off running with my mom close behind us. Once we talked to a police officer, I finally understood the full extent of what had happened. My mom told the officer that after we passed the guy with the broken down car, he quickly ran to the hood, slammed it down, and got into his car. He then sped after us. That's when my mom knew this guy had bad intentions. She said he kept trying to speed up and get on the side of us, but she was able to speed up to avoid him. Once my mom turned toward the police station, she noticed the guy had stopped following us. She gave a good description of the guy in his car, but because everything happened so fast, she didn't get a license plate number. I'm pretty sure the police never found him. I don't know what he had planned for us if we had actually stopped to help, but I know it couldn't have been good. To the guy that faked his car being broken down on an empty street, let's not ever meet again. This took place around 2 years ago. I was driving to work, a 5-hour drive. It was already dark. About 3 hours into the drive, I started to get tired. I bought myself a coffee and some snacks at a gas station and continued. But snacks and coffee can only keep you awake for so long, and I started to feel tired again. This part of the road was nothing but thick, dark pinewood forest around me. No other cars on the road, nothing. Only insects smashing into my windshield now and then in the empty road. I was now extremely tired, and at one point I nearly drove off the road from almost falling asleep. I had to sleep now. I couldn't wait for another gas station. I needed to stop as soon as I saw a place to park my car. When I'm tired, I fall asleep really fast. If I'm tired enough, I can even fall asleep in the middle of a sentence when I'm talking. So it's a bit urgent for me to find a place to stop. It felt like an hour, but it was probably just 5 minutes when I spotted a small pull-off area on the road. It was like a parking space for quick stops, such as taking a bathroom break or switching drivers, not even a real rest area. I stopped there, rolled down my windows to check if I heard any weird noises. Total silence. I rolled the windows back up. Nothing bad was going to happen. I hadn't seen a car for about 30 minutes. This road was empty. If someone was checking on my car, it was probably the police making sure I was okay. I left my keys in the ignition and locked the doors, just to be safe. I adjusted my seat to make it more comfortable for sleeping, took off my shoes and placed them on the passenger seat. It felt so nice to close my eyes and I instantly fell asleep. I don't know why, but something woke me up. I couldn't see much, but a bright light hit my eyes. At first, I thought it was a flashlight, but then I realized it was the high beams of another car in my rearview mirror blinding me. I looked in my left mirror and saw a guy walking up beside my car. Maybe he needed help with something. Should I make it clear that I was inside? He was right beside my left back door. Should I step out and ask what he was doing? I didn't need to. The guy started jerking and pulling on my left back door. I nearly freaked out when I realized he was trying to force his way into my car. My seat was adjusted so I could lay down, and I had pushed it back as far as it would go. I couldn't reach the pedals, which made it impossible for me to drive the car. I slammed the car horn and the noise shattered the silence. The guy jumped back, giving me about 2 seconds to push my seat forward so I could reach the pedals. But it was still way out of adjustment, so I was kind of pulling myself toward the steering wheel because my seat was laying flat and wasn't supporting my back. Anyway, I started the car and drove off with a cloud of smoke from my screeching tires. It was hard to drive with nothing holding up my upper body, but I managed. As I left, I looked in the rearview mirror and saw the guy standing there staring at me. 2 more guys were walking up beside him. From the silhouette of their beams, one of them had something in his hand like a wrench or a crowbar. I drove super fast, way over the speed limit. My whole body was trembling with adrenaline and fear. I drove like that for about 30 minutes before stopping at a gas station to fix my seat and put my shoes on again. I figured out I had only been asleep for about 10 minutes. Well, I didn't have to sleep again until I got to my destination, which was surrounded by heavy-duty fencing, and the building had an alarm. I told my boss the next day and he said they actually have problems with what we call road pirates in Sweden. Criminals who force you to stop on the road and rob you of everything, including your car in that specific area. It could have just been 3 nice guys who wanted to check if I was okay, but then why didn't they just knock on my driver's window? The thing in his hand could have been a big flashlight. I guess we'll never know. Be safe. First, let me give you some background. I have been going to the gym consistently every day for about 6 years. mostly in the evenings around 8 or 9 p.m. My workouts usually lasted until 10 or 11 p.m. In the summer of 2018, I switched to LA Fitness, which is a large health club chain. I had been going there for about 6 months when an older man around his 30s or early 40s, I say old because I was 18 at the time, and that seemed old to me, began to approach me nearly every time I was at the gym. He was Hispanic, shorter, around 5'8", and I believe he told me his name, though I forgot it, as well as how old he was, which I also forgot. Now, keep in mind that I am an 18-year-old 5'2" female. At first, I took his attention as friendly and I was friendly back, but I tried to end conversations quickly because he liked to chat for a long time and I just wanted to get my workouts done. In the beginning, when he first started approaching me, he would tell me he thought I was very beautiful and that he would love to take me out for drinks. He asked for my name and how old I was, which I told him because I thought that was innocent enough. He also mentioned that he had a young daughter with his ex, whom he described as a psycho, and he said he would love for me to meet his daughter. Obviously, I brushed off these invites, and eventually I began to get really annoyed. I started to dread going to the gym because I didn't want to be approached by him. One day, after about a year of him approaching me nearly every day, even when I changed the times I went to the gym, he spent hours there. An older gentleman who was exercising on a bike behind me noticed the man approach me. By this time, I had been ignoring the creepy guy every time he tried to talk to me, pretending to focus extra hard on my workout while listening to my music. He stood next to me and started speaking and calling my name, trying to get my attention, but I kept ignoring him. After a few minutes, I guess he started to feel awkward and walked away. The older gentleman behind me got my attention and told me that he had seen the guy talking to me several times and even watching me work out from a distance every time I was at the gym. He advised me to report him and straight up tell him to leave me alone, because what he was doing was harassment. I thanked him and decided to brush it off as just an extra creepy guy. The next time he tried to approach me, I told him to leave me alone, that I had a boyfriend and that I wasn't interested. After that, he left me alone. Occasionally, I worked out with one of my friends who mentioned she noticed a strange, older Hispanic man watching me work out at the gym, but I just brushed that off too. I know I sound really stupid. I truly thought he wasn't a threat though. Fast forward to December 2019. I was nearing the end of my workout. It was 11 p.m., and I noticed him at the gym. I didn't think he had spotted me yet, so as soon as I saw him, I decided to cut my workout short and started walking to the front doors of the gym. I had one headphone in and one out, just in case. The gym was relatively empty by that time, and I felt a little nervous walking alone to my car in the dark, even though I had parked close to the entrance. As I was about to reach the doors, I heard him calling my name. "Stephanie! Stephanie!" I immediately began to panic and started walking faster. He, I kid you not, started tapping my back and gripped my arm, still saying my name. By this point, some people in the gym had started to pay attention, and I briefly turned to him and yanked my arm away. I ran out of the gym to my car, locked the doors, and left. He had never done anything like that before, so I was shaken. The next day when I went to work out again, it was about 8 p.m. I had talked myself out of being scared, but I still decided to be extra cautious. I was working out near the dumbbell area, on the far end of the gym where the benches are, and a mirror spans the whole wall. The machines and workout equipment were behind me, and through the mirror, I could see everything going on. I saw him enter and walk to a machine a few feet behind me, so I hurried my workout. After finishing a set, I looked up into the mirror to see what he was doing and saw him smiling at me from his machine. I got immediate goosebumps and began to put all of my equipment away. I avoided looking in his direction or the mirror at all. When I came back to pick up my water bottle, which I had left on the bench, I briefly noticed someone sitting on the bench next to mine. I looked into the mirror to scan my surroundings again, and right next to me was him, again, staring at me in the mirror. Extremely on edge and nervous by this point, I immediately left and asked one of the front desk attendants to walk me to my car. I got in my car, locked the doors, and called my boyfriend to tell him what had happened. After about 10 minutes of talking in the parking lot, I noticed a big truck directly across from me turn on its lights and shine its brights straight in my face. I thought it was strange, so I squinted into the light to see who might be inside. It was just the outline of a smaller man. I quickly realized it must have been the guy from the gym, so I quickly drove away, checking my mirrors to see if anyone was following me. By that point I was shaking, and I noticed the truck pulling out of the parking lot and driving behind me. I still couldn't clearly make out who it was, but I was freaking out. I drove almost all the way home with the same truck still behind me. I quickly realized I couldn't just lead him to my house. Out of all the stupid things I had done so far, that would have been the stupidest. I pulled into a grocery store parking lot that was lit and populated, and I waited to see what he would do. He kept driving past me, and I waited for about 20 minutes before driving home, making sure I wasn't being followed. After all of that, you would think I would have just changed gyms and called the police. Well, no. 18-year-old me still denied that it 100% was him or that anything would happen to me. The rest of that week, I had no encounters with him, so the incident started to leave my mind. The next Tuesday, it was January 2020. I was at the gym once again around 11 p.m., having finished my workout and was about to leave. I hadn't really paid attention to whether the guy was there or not, but I scanned the gym once before leaving and didn't see anything. I headed to my car, got in, and forgot to lock the doors. I sat there texting my boyfriend asking when he could call. We were long distance at the time, so we usually called at night. Suddenly, someone started knocking on my window. I jumped slightly and looked out the window. It was him. He started calling my name, and I saw him reaching down to the door handle. In that moment, I remembered I hadn't locked my doors, and I immediately hit the lock button. The smile that formed on his face is one I will never forget. He looked almost smug, like he knew that even that wouldn't help me. He began banging on my window, telling me to unlock and open the door repeatedly. Eventually, he moved to pulling on the door handle. In retrospect, I realized my first instinct should have been to call the police. But in that moment, I decided to call my boyfriend. My phone instantly hooked up to my car's Bluetooth, and it started to ring very loudly even on the outside. I think that's really what saved me. As soon as he heard the ringing, I assume he thought I was calling the police, and he immediately ran away and got into the car next to mine. He pulled out, and it was the same big truck that had been shining its headlights at me and had followed me almost all the way home the week before. I was shaking with fear, talking to my boyfriend and explaining what had happened, and I also called my mom. I don't know why, but I never called the police to report it. Mostly because I wasn't sure they would believe me or that I had any evidence to back me up. I have since changed gyms and gotten a taser. I also work out only during the day, and I look over my shoulder every time I am somewhere alone. I still wonder what would have happened that night if I hadn't remembered my doors were unlocked. He could have been a kidnapper, serial killer, sex trafficker, anything, even just a desperate man. Either way, weird gym dude, let's not meet. I am 20 years old. I live in the suburbs in a small residence with 6 houses. My gate is very often broken, including today. That means 80% of the time it is wide open, so anyone can enter the small courtyard. My house has 1 floor with 4 bedrooms, including mine. Downstairs there is a guest bedroom, which is used as a treatment room because I have serious health issues. This is where all the equipment and medicines are stored, like morphine in doses that could kill an average person. This is also where the care takes place. I have a dog and I'm very close to him. He is a big part of my life. He feels everything, to the point of sensing my epileptic seizures before they happen and recognizing the nurses by the sound of their tires when they arrive in the yard. He never barks, except when there is a problem. Finally, a nurse comes 4 to 5 times a day to give me care at home, including infusions. That morning, like every morning, my nurse arrived at 8 a.m. For the rest of the story, I'll call her Sandra. She took care of me as usual. An infusion of a painkiller, replacing the antibiotic diffusers, doing a blood test, and resetting my morphine pump. We usually chat about random things, and she tells me stories about her patients while we go through the treatment. My nurses have been part of my life for 6 years now. That day I had a medical appointment in the morning, and I was alone all day because my parents were at work, except for the nurses' visits every 4 hours. Once I returned from my appointment, I sat on the sofa with my dog while waiting for my nurse. After a while, I heard the sound of tires, so I got up thinking it was the nurse, but my dog started growling behind the door. I looked at the time and it was 11:50 a.m. I thought it was a bit early, but sometimes my nurse swaps my appointment time with another patient of hers. I heard a knock, and when I opened the door, I saw a young woman I had never seen before. She said, "Hello, I'm Camille, a third-year nursing student. Your nurse will be a little late, so she told me to come and start preparing, and she will arrive soon." I wasn't suspicious at all. I'm used to students coming, but I was a little surprised that Sandra hadn't warned me. She usually does, either in the morning or by sending me a message. Also, she never leaves a student alone on their first visit. I figured Sandra just forgot to tell me. I let Camille in and showed her to the treatment room. I got the supplies ready while she washed her hands. My dog was acting weird, growling at her and turning around me. I was embarrassed, so I left him in the living room and closed the door for peace. I didn't really mind what she did, so I stayed on my phone. She started setting up the IV infusion stand and grabbed a syringe. Normally, we rinse my central catheter with a pre-made syringe of solution. But this syringe wasn't pre-made. She had prepared it herself. I looked up and saw that the ampules for my treatment were still sealed, yet I had clearly heard the sound of ampules breaking. I started to feel something was off. She approached me with the syringe, and just as she was about to inject it, I received a message from my nurse. "I'll be there in 5 minutes. Can you start pulling out the materials?" I quickly got up and said, I'm going to the bathroom. I'll be right back." I ran and locked myself in the downstairs bathroom. The entire time my dog was barking and growling. When I opened the door, he followed me straight to the bathroom, so we both stayed there. I texted my nurse, "I'm with Camille, your student, don't worry." My nurse replied, "Who?" I started crying, feeling really scared. Camille knocked on the bathroom door and asked, "Is everything okay?" I said, yes, I'm fine." Then I heard the front door slam. 2 minutes later, I heard it open again and I recognized my nurse's voice. I came out of the bathroom crying. She asked what had happened. I told her everything and showed her the treatment room. We called the police, who arrived and examined everything, taking samples including the syringe and the rest of the materials Camille had prepared. The test results came a few days later. The syringe contained a paralyzer, enough to paralyze a person weighing 120 kilograms, and I weigh only 40 kilograms. The IV had a medicine meant to lower the heart rate, but it was so concentrated that it could have stopped anyone's heart. To this day, we still don't know who Camille is, and thankfully, I never heard from her again. I should mention that she stole all my opioids, but nothing else, like my tablet on the bed or my computer in the living room. Looking back, I realized my dog sensed that this person meant me harm. I also think I should have paid more attention to her because she was just a student, and my treatments are far from simple. I still wonder what could have happened if I hadn't looked at my phone. This happened on St. Patrick's Day 2008, about a month after I got my driver's license. My buddy Eric and I had nothing to do, so we decided to cruise around the Pike, a long stretch of highway surrounded by bars, strip clubs, restaurants, and general scenery, and enjoy the fact that I could finally drive at night. Before heading down the Pike, we stopped at a convenience store to grab some food. As we were about to eat in my car, an older, very thin woman approached my vehicle. Being an anxious teenager with slow reflexes, I did nothing. She tapped on the window, which I rolled down just a crack. I noticed she had a very noticeable lazy eye. I have one too, but hers was darting off in all directions, and was dressed somewhat provocatively. She was a twig, so even her tight fishnet stockings were loose on her bare-bone legs. She looked at me with her one normal eye and asked if I could give her a ride to the liquor store a couple of miles down the Pike. I should make it clear that if this happened today, I wouldn't have made the mistake of letting her in the car. But I was a dumb kid, and so that's exactly what I did. Eric got out of the passenger side and sat behind me instead. He later explained that he did this so if she tried anything funny, he could attack her from behind. The woman got in and sat beside me. She kept thanking me and constantly pointed out how sweet we were for doing this. As we drove down the Pike, she started asking us questions. It started off as small talk. Where are you guys from? How old are you? What are you doing driving around on St. Patrick's Day? And eventually she asked if we were looking to party. We assured her we weren't, and she smiled, saying, "Two good-looking boys like yourselves must be trying to party tonight." Still, I kept telling her we were just trying to have a calm and normal night. Then she mentioned that a friend of hers had just gotten off work and asked if we liked Hispanic women, which was a very out-of-the-blue question. I told her I didn't mind Hispanic women, I suppose. She smiled and said, "She's looking to party tonight too." I don't know why it took me so long to figure it out, but it was around that time the unsettling thought popped into my head. Dude, I think you just picked up a hooker. If that was true, I had already broken the law. So a bit of panic set in as she continued asking us more questions. She asked if we drank and then immediately reminded me that I was taking her to a liquor store. Not very subtle. Eventually, we reached the liquor store, finally, and as I pulled in, I noticed the parking lot was completely empty except for a pickup truck. A man was sitting in the driver's seat of the truck, and when he saw us, he turned on his car and drove around me, blocking the exit. My first thought was, oh God, it's an ambush. The man stepped out of his vehicle and began yelling at me. I rolled down the window to hear what he was saying, and I heard, "She's bad news, man." Without hesitation, I turned off the car, grabbed the keys, and jumped out, not even shutting the door behind me. "What do you mean?" I asked. "That woman in your car is a prostitute. he told me, confirming my earlier suspicions. She walks around that Wawa back there asking men to drive her to buy booze and then to the motel about a mile down the road. She's bad news, man. Relieved that this guy seemed to be on my side, I let out a huge sigh of relief and begged him to help me. Again, I was a stupid teenager and had absolutely no idea what to do. Back at the car, the lazy-eyed woman stuck her head out of the open door and asked if anything was wrong. The guy from the pickup angrily yelled, "Get out of the car now." She didn't listen. I could hear her muttering, "It's all right, they're cool. It's all cool." The guy marched over to the car, swung open her door, and growled for her to get out again. He didn't wait for a response. He grabbed her and pulled her out, shoving her away. The entire time she kept mumbling, No, everything's all right. They said they're cool with it." My friend Eric stepped out from the back seat, hopped into the front seat, and slammed the door behind him, locking it. The guy yelled at her once more and she disappeared behind the liquor store. I thanked him about a dozen times and he warned me to never pick up strangers again shortly before driving off. I jumped back in the car and sped away, my nerves shot to oblivion. And today I refuse to go near that area, especially around March. A bit of context first. My cat likes to go outside every day. In the morning, he follows us to the door, takes the elevator down with us, and then goes about his day outside until we bring him back home again in the evening. Now, my cat isn't the most punctual guy, so it's pretty common for him to stay out much later in the neighborhood, sometimes well into the night or even for several days. Or he gets bored and doesn't play for more than 2 hours and wants to get back inside. The problem is when we're not home, he just has to wait. My family and I live in an apartment on the first floor, so my cat's solution is to sit under one of our balconies and meow at the top of his lungs to get our attention. When we're home, this works perfectly fine, but when we're not, it's a lot less effective. So our solution was to gently ask our neighbors, who have the key to our apartment, to bring him up so he doesn't have to wait outside all day. Those who don't have the key sometimes let him inside the building so he's not literally outside. For example, when it's raining. Our apartment is a bit special because it's bigger than the others. So to get inside, there are 2 ways from the main hall. You can take the stairs to the left and open the door that has 2 locks, or use the elevator with this special key, which goes directly inside our apartment, and the door has only 1 lock. The cat is used to the second option, and so am I because we're both lazy. But when the neighbors who don't have the key let him inside the building, he goes up the stairs and waits. Since I usually use the elevator from the parking lot 2 floors below, that means I don't see him waiting in the hall. He just meows outside the door to get me to open up for him, or my dad or my mom. We all have our habits with my parents and neighbors, and it works pretty well. Now you know how everything goes with my little guy. Anyway, here's what happened a while ago. My parents love the outdoors, so I'm usually left alone on weekends. Generally, that means taking care of chores and inviting my friends over to have the apartment to ourselves, which is pretty nice. This time I was alone. It was late, around 11 p.m., and I was just chilling in the living room when I heard meowing over the sound of the TV. Someone had let my cat into the building and he was waiting outside the door. I grabbed my keys and started opening the first lock. I don't know about other pet owners, but I know my cat's meow by heart. It's a kind of rising meow that's very high-pitched and cute, with a specific rhythm because I've been hearing it nearly every day for 5 years. So I stopped. The noise wasn't what it usually is. It was too deep and just off. This wasn't my cat outside my door. He's the only cat around that knows he has to wait by the door and scream to be let inside. By that point, I had stopped halfway through opening the door and waited to hear him again. I noticed scratching. My cat never scratches that door. At that point, I was really weirded out. But the meowing was getting louder and I didn't want to wake the neighbors, so I continued with my key. Suddenly, I heard another noise that freaked me out. A cough. For the record, I'm not a very cautious person, and in my whole 21 years of living in this apartment, I've probably looked through the peephole about 5 times. But a small part of my brain told me to do it that night, and thank God it did. So I let go of my keys, put my eye against the door, and saw it. A man standing there, meowing in front of my door. To say that I was terrified is really an understatement. My heart stopped. I just stood there petrified for what felt like an hour. I'm not sure how long it took for me to move again, but eventually my body just took over. I did what you'd expect. Ran for my phone, stood in the corner of the living room, and called the police. By the time they came, there was nobody in front of the door. I can't even remember when the meowing stopped. And they just took my statement before telling me to be cautious and left. To this day, I still don't know what that meowing guy wanted, and I'm not sure I want to. I also don't know how he got inside the building since you need a key to access it, or how he knew that I would open the door if he imitated my cat in front of it. At least I'll be more careful from now on. And my cat eventually came back since then. He's sleeping in my bed as I'm writing this. I often like to go running in summer or whenever the weather is nice. This happened a week before I was supposed to start high school. I thought about going running that day, but I got the idea in the morning. I usually run in the evening while the sun is still up, but it isn't as hot as during the day, and there's less of a chance for it to get hotter if I don't make it back in time like I would in the morning. Well, of course, I forget my promise to myself and only remember around 9 p.m. Now it's the end of summer, so the sun sets earlier than I'm used to. But I think I'll get back in like an hour or so, it will be fine. I had been putting off the run, so I didn't want to put it off again. I should mention that I am a girl, even though a lot of girls I know cross the street when they see even a slightly drunk guy walking. I always called them wimps. I was ready to take on anyone who tried anything. I live in a less populated area outside of town where almost everyone knows everyone, so I felt extra safe. What a naive fool I was. So I go out, start my run, and it's fine. It's getting a little dark, but I can still see the tracks, so all is good. I start feeling off when I see a pair of people ahead of me. As I get closer, I realize they're just teen guys, and I run past them with no problem. When I finally reach the usual point in my run where I turn around, a cemetery. It's kind of creepy, but it has benches and it's a small graveyard, so I never feel weird about taking a break there. It's already pretty dark. I drink some water from my bottle and stand under a tree next to the gate. I don't sit down where I usually do because the bench is near a fence, and the darkness has made me a little nervous about being alone in case someone jumps out at me. It's funny that that's what scared me the most at the time. After catching my breath, I stay for a few more minutes, just listening to the wind. I see a bike pass the cemetery, taking the route I'll take when I run back. I leave the cemetery and it's gotten really dark enough that I can barely see 2 meters ahead. I start slowly running back. After about 15 meters, I start hearing voices. A couple more and I can clearly hear someone talking. My thoughts immediately jump to the conclusion that there are at least 2 people in front of me if I can hear a conversation. So I slow down even more until I get close enough to make out what's being said. Keep in mind it's completely dark and this road doesn't have streetlights, so I can't see anything. I get close enough to hear the words and my heart sinks. I don't recall exactly what was said, but the male voice said something like, "I see this girl. I could just pull her into the bushes." There were tall bushes lining one side of the track. At first, my heart stops, but immediately I go into fight or flight mode. I can hear my heart pounding in my ears and I'm full of adrenaline. The bad kind. I know I can't just stop or he'll know I heard him, so I keep walking. Thankfully, the track is separated from the road by a small grass field. I move to the side of the road, putting some distance between us. I keep an eye on him. I still don't know how many people are there, but I see a square of light, probably a phone. Then I hear him jump on his bicycle and ride off. It turned out he was just talking on the phone, but just because he was alone didn't mean I was less scared of him. I walk on the side of the road for a few minutes, making sure he's far away from me. Once I get back on the track, I sprint home like crazy. The whole way back, I'm shaking with fear, looking at the bushes and the cars that pass by. My mind racing, gripping my water bottle so tightly that I'm ready to smack anyone who comes near me. When I finally reach the first streetlights, I feel like I've escaped death. Last summer, at around 3 a.m., I was returning home to my apartment in a residential district of Vilnius, Lithuania. Vilnius is a compact, neat town of about 500,000 people, and while it has some nightlife, it's mostly centered around the old town. The large suburbs filled with Soviet-era concrete blocks can feel deserted at night. My home is within walking distance of the city center, so it's normal for me to walk back at night. I was walking down a completely empty street, enjoying the cool nighttime air. Every so often I'd see a car, usually a taxi, and the silence was almost eerie. Then I noticed a white van. I saw it from a distance, moving slowly in the first lane, almost as if it was watching something. The van turned onto a smaller side street and stopped between two large apartment blocks about 50 meters from me. The van was old, rusty, and beaten up, similar to ones used by small construction or relocation companies, but this one had no markings. The rear door opened and a man in his 40s or 50s stepped out. He was wearing ordinary clothes, jeans and a dark jacket. For several seconds, he looked around cautiously, but I was far away in a dark area, so he either didn't notice me or didn't pay attention. The man ran around the van and stopped in front of a large old metal box attached to the wall of a nearby building. These boxes are common in Soviet-era buildings, and they likely contain electrical equipment. As far as I know, these boxes are always locked. The van was parked in a way that blocked the box from view, but I was in a lucky spot and could see what happened. For a second or two, the man fiddled with the lock, opened the box, and took something out. Then he locked the box again and quickly ran back to the van, closing the rear door as the van started to move. It slowly picked up speed and drove off. At that moment, I remembered that it wasn't the first time I had seen this van. In fact, I'd seen it many times at night, cruising slowly around the residential areas of Vilnius. I never paid much attention to it, but I did remember it because there are so few cars on the streets at night. It seemed strange, so I told this story to some friends, and we all had a good laugh, making up stories about secret drug networks, spy messages, and the like. I almost forgot about it until last week. It was around 9:30 p.m., and I was walking along the street that separates the old town from the new town, right next to a store from a large supermarket chain. There was a metal box on the wall and it was open. A middle-aged man in a construction uniform from some construction company was squatting in front of it. When I noticed him, his hands were elbow deep inside the box. A woman, also middle-aged and wearing a uniform from the supermarket chain, was standing nearby, watching him. There were a lot of people on the street, but at that moment, I was the only one close enough to hear their conversation. They were probably talking before I walked up, and I overheard the last part of their exchange. The man said, "So they come to take it every night?" The woman answered, "Aga," which is Russian for "uh-huh." The question was in Lithuanian, but since Vilnius has a large Russian minority, bilingual conversations like this are common. The man closed the box and locked it with a small, cheap-looking lock. Then they noticed me. The woman shot me an angry look, turned around, and disappeared into the store. The man walked off in the other direction. There was no goodbye or anything, and it seemed like I had interrupted something that they didn't want anyone to see. I honestly have no idea what was going on, but I have a few theories. The most likely one is that some low-level illegal activity is happening, like people paying local criminals for protection by leaving money in specific electricity distribution boxes, and the thugs pick it up at night. But I clearly remember the builder man saying every night, which seems odd. Maybe people are stealing something, money, goods, or drugs, from their workplaces, and the metal boxes and shady vans are part of an underground distribution network. I'm not sure. Any ideas would be helpful. I've been having trouble sleeping recently, so when it gets to around 8 or 9 a.m., I stop trying to sleep and get some stuff done early. Last night was one of those nights, so I decided to take my dogs for a short walk in the park beside my house. I'm never afraid of walking at night. I'm tall and live in a quiet suburb, so the darkness didn't worry me. I head out with my dogs and into the park, which is partly lit by lamps but still quite dark. When I was a kid, there was this one stretch of unlit pathway that used to scare me in the dark, so I'm more aware of my surroundings when walking there. As we start walking along that stretch of path, one of my dogs, Alfie, turns around and starts barking. I turn around and see a man jogging behind me. When he gets about 10 feet behind me, he stops immediately and starts walking toward me. My alarm bells start ringing, but I stay calm and nod at him as he walks past. I can't make out his features much, but I notice he's staring directly at me, maintaining eye contact as he passes. I say a quick, "How are ya?" but he stays silent. Once he's about 10 feet past me, he starts jogging again, heading toward a part of the path lined by trees. I'm properly spooked now, so I take out my phone and send a voice message to my friends on WhatsApp, explaining what just happened. I'm finishing the message when I hear a noise and turn around. The guy is jogging up behind me again. To explain, there's only one path and he was ahead of me. For him to get behind me without me seeing, he would have had to run to the area under the trees, turn around, quietly cross the grass, and come back up the path behind me. I turn around and watch him come up to me. He stops jogging, walks past, and I say the same short sentence again. Then he jogs off. At this point, I decide I'm going straight home, but the little laneway leading to my road is ahead, so I have to keep walking the same way. I get about 50 meters up that stretch of path between the lampposts when Alfie starts making grumbling pre-bark noises again. I look up, and there he is ahead of me, just standing beneath one of the orange streetlights looking in my direction. My heart is racing, but I make sure to keep facing him. There's no way I'm turning around. I had seen another guy riding his bike around the park, and there are houses that connect to it, so I'm not totally isolated. Plus, I've got a big dog. The laneway to my road is just past him. so I let my dogs pull me up the path. As soon as we get near him, Alfie tries to move toward him, causing the man to shift his position. I pull Alfie away and start talking to the dogs, saying, "Okay guys, let's go home, come on, this way." And I keep talking until we're out of the park, feeling my back exposed the whole time. My house is just across from the laneway, so I make my way quickly to the gate. Just as I'm about to enter the code, a loud noise, like a bin falling over, comes from behind me, from the other row of houses, the ones that back onto the park. I spin around to look at my neighbors, thinking maybe one of them opened a door to go to work. But there's nobody, not a sound. I quickly put in the code for the gate and make it inside as fast as I can. I went straight to my room and fell asleep. I'm never walking in that park alone at night again. That guy was the biggest creep, and I hope I never run into him again. Some crazy people can show it in their eyes. This happened to me in the early 1980s when I was about 14 or 15 years old. I lived on a quiet street in the suburbs of my city, in a small place you wouldn't call the countryside but close, on a Spanish island in the Atlantic Ocean. It was known locally back then that little girls started disappearing more often, but it wasn't yet a topic of conversation between the towns and neighborhoods. Most of my friends lived in the city, so I would often take the bus to go meet them. That day at around 5 or 6 p.m., I decided to start walking to the bus stop since I was going to meet my friend that evening. The bus stop wasn't actually that far from my house, maybe a half a mile away. It was located on a quiet street with few cars or people around, lined with old street lamps that flickered even in the daylight. I had taken this route so many times that I didn't really think anything of it. When I got there, the street was dead, with no cars or people around, so I just stood there for a few minutes waiting for my bus. A while later, a white van slowly approached my direction and started slowing down right next to the bus stop. I didn't think much of it, like maybe they were just parking or looking for something. But then 2 men got out and started walking towards me. One of them looked normal enough, but the other man caught my attention because his face was a kind of deformed, with one hollow eye socket where his left eye should have been. His other eye locked onto mine, and the intensity of his gaze made me freeze on the spot. Before I could even process what was happening, they had a hold of me. One grabbed my arm with a grip so tight it felt like my bones were going to snap, and the other wrapped his arm around my waist, dragging me toward the van. Neither of them said a word, although to be honest, their silence was worse than anything they could have said. I started screaming and kicking as hard as I could, but there was literally nobody I could see around. I remember I even started yelling, "Fire, fire," since my mom had told me it was like a code for people who were getting abducted. It really was a horrible feeling, seeing myself getting pulled closer to the van knowing I couldn't do anything to avoid it. They shoved me into the van, and as I landed on the floor, I saw a third man with a bandana covering his face and a Doberman that were staring at me with a disgusting, creepy face that still haunts me to this day. It was in that moment that I started to think that no one would help me or even hear me at all. I started struggling and fighting back, and I kind of managed to get them off me for a second, but they kept grabbing me and pulling me back in. I remember this distinctive metallic smell inside the van, like rust or maybe blood. I felt like probably the luckiest person on earth when, out of nowhere, my older brother showed up. He didn't live with us at the time, so coincidentally, he was probably visiting us that day. I don't really remember why he was there. He started yelling and throwing punches at the men. In the struggle, they let go of me, and I managed to pull myself free and back away. The men seemed to be caught off guard. After a few seconds of fighting, they ran back to their van, slammed the doors, and sped off. Right after that moment, we ran home and I started crying in desperation. The walk home was hard since my legs were shaking nonstop. I felt overwhelmed and couldn't really process what just happened to me. People who have experienced something similar to this know how shocked and paranoid you start feeling after this. We reported it to the police later that night, but they didn't do much. Things like this weren't taken very seriously back then. To those men, let's never ever meet again. I was 22 years old when this happened. I worked in a grocery store that had been featured in the news. You could see me in the clip, and it was clear where I worked. I had just come back from vacation when a coworker told me that a guy had been coming around every day for a week asking for me. When I asked who or why, they said they didn't know, but that he was around my age and seemed a little off. A few hours later, my coworker came to tell me that the guy was back and again asking for me. Let's call him James. I can't remember his real name anyway. In the back room, we had a computer and you could see all the camera footage from all over the store. I looked and didn't recognize James, but I decided to go ask what he wanted. He was clearly drunk and said that he had seen me on TV and wanted to ask me out. I replied with, "I'm sorry, but I'm in a relationship, even though I was single." I said I needed to get back to work, and he asked if he should come with me. I was confused and said that I was working. He then left, but I could see him through the cameras outside the store, drinking. A few hours later, he was still waiting for me outside, so I had to use another exit when I left. The next day, I came to work and saw him waiting outside the store. He had a huge smile on his face and walked up to me. He was really shy and didn't say a word until I said hey while passing by to get into the store. He followed me inside and said he needed to talk. I asked him what was up and he said, "How about we go to the movies?" He was really creepy, so I replied, "I'm sorry, I have a boyfriend, remember?" As I was walking away, he started following me and asked if he should come help me with my work. "No thanks," I replied. Again, I checked the camera footage and once again he was waiting for me outside. At this point, I started asking a male coworker to escort me safely to the tram every night when my shift ended. I started getting really scared once this had been going on for a while and he clearly wouldn't leave me alone. I asked my brother if he could drive me to work on his motorcycle and hug me outside my workplace, so it looked like he was my boyfriend and James might leave me alone, since I knew he was somewhere watching and waiting for me to get to work. It didn't help. I started getting messages like, "Is that your boyfriend?" and "He doesn't need to know if we go out." I was confused about how he had gotten my number. I asked all of my coworkers and a new one said she had given him my number because he said he was a friend of mine. I was so mad. At this point, I asked my male coworkers to throw him out if he ever came back, which was a lot. A couple of weeks went by without any harassment, and I finally thought he had left me alone. Boy, was I wrong. One day, I came to work and heard that we had a new coworker and it was his first day. I didn't think anything of it and went to change my clothes. When I came out of the changing room, my jaw dropped. Another coworker said, "Hey, this is James." I looked in horror as she asked me what was wrong. I said, "This is the creep that's been stalking me for weeks," as James smiled. I went to find my boss to ask him what the heck was going on. My boss said he had no idea that James was my stalker and kind of laughed it off as no big deal. I told him either he leaves or I will. He said that I wouldn't have to work the same shift as James and that he couldn't fire him. He lied. I had a lot of shifts with him, and wherever I went, he followed without saying a word. He just kept following me. I would often take my lunch break by the computer so I could see where he was, and every day I could see him just staring at me behind me as I ate. We had cameras there too. This went on for a while. He would text me every day, but at work he didn't say a thing, just stared. My boss finally realized what a freak James was and that he didn't do any work. He just stalked me, and started thinking of ways to fire him. One time I noticed James was clearly drunk at work and told my boss. He got fired, and this is when the stalking finally stopped.